podcast as Adrienne Marie. So this is my first time doing this. Technically, I used to record the podcast on Twitch. I did it like twice actually, then I kind of fell off of doing that. So I decided to take a different approach, actually show you guys, showing me record the podcast. And this is something that I'm going to be doing from now on. I am going to be recording episode 12. So remember a few times in January I announced that I was going to be doing a documentary. So I didn't... something happened with that and it kind of fell through, and I kind of got this idea. This is something that I always wanted to do. I always wanted to show myself recording the podcast again, and that was supposed to be what the documentary was going to be, like a behind the scenes type of thing. And then I thought, okay, you know what, let's just go ahead and make this a thing, like a weekly or bi-weekly thing. So again, from now on, you all are going to be watching me record the Kindaris Pictures podcast exclusively on YouTube. And the audio will still be available on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, so on and so forth. So I'm going to be recording, and for this first video, after this I'm not going to do this anymore, but for this first video I'm going to give a breakdown of what I'm doing every time I do it. As was planned for the little short documentary that I was planning. So before I get started, I want you guys to know just a little fun fact. The reason this mic is resting against the mug is because I don't know how I did it, but somehow I broke the little latch for this tripod mount to hold the microphone up. So usually when I record the podcast, or before, I will record it holding the mic. So sometimes you might hear the mic moving around a little bit. That's because I'm holding it. So now I've come back to letting the mic sit, and I'm holding it up with this mug. And it is a Kindaris Pictures mug. So I'm going to put these headphones on, probably mess up my wig. So I have my script up, and I've got to pull up the article that I'm going to use. And let's go ahead and do that. It's funny. I also have this ring light shining on me. I probably need to turn the light down, but it's shining on me, and when I look at my computer screen, I can see the shape of the ring light. So, note that's not what I wanted to do. So this is actually going to be a very interesting episode. Let's make sure I silence my phone. Oh, I already did. And I have my article up. Also, this is not paid promotion for HP laptops. I know I've got the logo all in here. So thankfully, fortunately, my computer is touchscreen. So that's another thing that comes in handy when I am recording the podcast. When I'm moving around and when I'm recording, I can just use my fingers to move my screen when I need to read. And that's something that I often forget. And previously, you might have been able to hear my mouse click. Maybe when I would be recording. But I'm keeping it in mind now. So I've got my audio recording software open. I know that my process is a little more complicated than it needs to be, but it's my process. It's what I've become used to, what I've become accustomed to. Excuse me, fix my dress. And everything is up, so let's go ahead and jump into it. So what I'm about to record is something that you all hear every time you listen to the podcast. So I'm going to test it really quick first. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Blup, blup, blup. Testing, testing. Okay, so I can pull it a little bit closer to me. Testing, 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 testing. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Good evening, everyone. This is A.G. Marie, and you are tuned in to Season 3, Episode 12 of the Kindaris Pictures podcast. MGM's Cabin in the Sky is now recognized and revered as a foundational piece of work in Black Hollywood history. But not everyone was a fan of the film or the original play of the same name. So I'm going to hit pause. I don't necessarily have to do that, but sometimes I'll hit pause on my audio recording software to give myself a little break. And also for little moments when my dog, you can't see her, but my dog is sitting at my feet right now. And she just made a little random noise. So now I'm going to flip over to the article. So usually I don't read the entire article. And I wasn't going to read this one. I was actually going to read this one in its entirety, but I'll change my mind. The reason that I don't read the articles, most of the articles in their entirety, is because I want to kind of convince people and motivate people to check out the Google News Archives, to check out the Afro-American newspaper. That's where a lot of the source material comes from, old issues of the Afro-American. And there's so much good information so much good history in this particular newspaper. So it is specifically the Baltimore Afro-American. And like I said, I want people to actually go to the article when I post the link and read the article, and then they just, like, another article might catch their eye. I've read, found stuff about my hometown, about entertainers that I love and I hadn't found articles on before, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to do that this time. I am not going to read this entire article. And I'm going to get another glimpse at it for like the title, important information. So for you guys, I'm going to read the editor's note in this article. So the title is Term Cabin Film Downright Criminal. The editor's note. It is from an article from New York. I don't know where it was originally published. It doesn't say. I'm going to guess maybe the New York Times. I can't think of any black publications in New York specifically. Probably a publication in Harlem. I don't know why I said that. Like just like everybody, every black article and every black thing was in Harlem in the early 20th century. It just says New York. Yeah, I can't think off the top of my head of any black publications from New York. I know in California they had the California Eagle. In Chicago they had the Defender. Down here in Baltimore and Richmond and Virginia they had the Afro-American. They might have had an Afro-American in New York now that I think about it. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and hit pause or hit play on this software again. And read the article. From New York, term cabin film downright criminal. Hollywood's recent pledge to give colored players better roles in movie productions, which it has failed to do, has become more serious since studios launched a cycle of all-colored films, which is nothing more than an expert sidestepping of its pledge. Critics and columnists, who are not so tied up with the studios for personal reasons or contractual agreements, are coming to the front with their analysis of this leapfrog act. Writing in Metronome, a magazine for musicians, Barry Olonavo further discloses that the best efforts of Hollywood to camouflage its appeasement of the white South and its sympathizers by its wholesale buffooning of colored players is downright criminal. Mr. Alanavo says in part, for colored audiences, they don't like to make pictures with and about colored people in Hollywood. But they have to make pictures with and about colored people in Hollywood occasionally, because the Office of War Information suggests that they do. Because the important little man who tells them how the movies are doing at the box office tells them that there is an enormous colored audience for movies with and about colored. Because the important little man who tells them how the movies are doing at the box office tells them that there is no enormous colored audience for movies with and about colored. So they make Green Pastures, An Imitation of Life, and Cabin in the Sky. They make films showing the colored man as gullible, ingenious, religionist who imagines it. So they make Green Pastures, An Imitation of Life, and Cabin in the Sky. They make films showing the colored man as a gullible, ingenious, religionist who imagines heaven to be a very place indeed, a place where... So they make Green Pastures, An Imitation of Life, and Cabin in the Sky. They make films showing the colored man as a gullible, ingenious, religionist who imagines heaven to be a very real place indeed, a place where the general atmosphere, the firmament, is a compound of molasses and butter. Miscegenation in films. They make films about the stray colored person who tries to pass as a white because of his light color. They make films in which there are small roles for colored as a toadying butler or a happily whining old family servant, in which all the colored players are in blackface, permanently acting Uncle Tom. They are still fighting the Civil War in Hollywood on the side of the South. And here is Cabin in the Sky, which is hailed in some quarters as MGM's atonement for its vilification of the abolitionist Thaddeus Stevens and Tennessee Johnson, a typical treatment of the color problem in Hollywood film. If Cabin in the Sky is atonement, then Gone with the Wind was an indictment of the Old South, Birth of a Nation a condemnation of slavery, and Simon Legree was a genial old man who loved his black charges. So here is where I plan to put the commercial on Anchor. So you guys noticed there were a few times where I kind of paused, well, because I messed up some of the the phrasing or the words in the article. So another thing that kind of, one of the reasons for that is, one, because I kind of moved a little too fast, but another reason is the text in the scan is a little it's an old newspaper, so sometimes you have to really pay attention to what you're reading if you're going to read it out loud when you're looking at these old newspapers, because there's like little marks, little ink stains and things like that that'll kind of throw you off sometimes. So that's something that I have to do. I have to go back and reread a certain paragraph because I messed up like one word or a few words, and I usually fix it. I usually, when I make a mistake, I pause for a while so I can have space to cut it and edit it, and then I refit it or fix it or whatever. And I took another pause because I was going to stop at one point, but that second part about passing, like movies where people pass, and also getting to the point of actually, because the article is about Cabin in the Sky, so I did want to read the rest of that. So that's something else that I'm going to fix. I'm going to remove that long pause where I'm in my head, I'm trying to figure out, do I want to keep reading this? And again, like I said, my initial plan was to read the entire article. So sometimes I make those like sudden last minute decisions. And so commercial break is over. I am going to talk about the article. And this is usually mostly where I kind of go off the cuff. And I have to reel myself in sometimes. So, make a little adjustment to my script. So now what I'm doing, I'm kind of in my head right now, thinking about what exactly I want to say, because what I found interesting about, well, I'll talk about it. That's going to be the point. So now here's another thing that sometimes happens. You probably heard my dog's collar. When she gets tired of hearing me talk because I'm disturbing her rest, she stands up and she walks to the door and she stares at it. But because I am recording this video, she's just going to have to sit there and watch the door because I'm recording a video. So, yeah, she's literally just standing here, just staring at the door. She's not even at the door. She's just standing in front of me, in front of my desk and watching the door. But she'll have to wait. So now we're going to hit pause again or hit play again. You can find that article in the March 13th, 1943 issue of the Afro-American. It is available in the Google News Archive. A link will be provided on the Kindaris Pictures website, on Anchor FM, and in the description of the video of this episode for YouTube. Alright, so this article, what exactly... I was intrigued because, to be more specific, ouch. This is going to be a hilarious video. Like, I'm hitting myself and everything. So now I have to actually get up because Kenya is now scratching the door for me to let her out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Alright, and I'm back. So I had to close the door all the way, and she's probably going to scratch on it when she wants to come back in. Alright, so I'm going to have to restart my talking point because I had such a weird pause. Okay, so I chose this article. There's a lot of base reason, a lot of things going on behind the scenes that I haven't shared with you all. So something that I'm interested in doing someday is writing some type of article, maybe a book, or doing some type of research on how how black critics or critics of black film, black moviegoers, middle class, possibly lower class, upper class, how everybody had their different views of certain movies that came out and plays, black movies, black plays, and how over time perception of these works of art have changed, as well as whose opinion and whose perspective kind of took over as the years progressed. So there's a little bit more that I can say about that, but like I said, I'm trying to write a book about it, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, or some type of article or something. So it's very interesting. I mean, I'm kind of going to be touching on it and talking about it. I chose this article because it kind of is a callback to the episode on the Green Pastures, how once upon a time that movie was mostly well received by black audiences and black critics or critics of black film when it came out, the play and the movie. And over time, the perception of it changed. So it was interesting to come across an article on Cabin in the Sky, which is a movie that I love, but I completely understand the criticism. And it seems, based on this one article, it seems that criticism, the disdain for movies about black people in the South or religious black people, what's the Bible story? The prodigal son type stories, how you have this story, like once upon a time it was accepted, and now you have Cabin in the Sky that comes out, and you have this particular writer of this article from the jump. He's just like, or he or she is just like, I'm sick of this, you know. Let me repeat his name. Olanava. Olanava, Barry Olanava. So it's a man who kind of criticized this magazine, and the magazine, it's from a magazine called Metrodome. So I kept saying, see, now I'm gonna have to fix this. I'm gonna go back and fix this because I've thrown myself off. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to save this first clip. I'm going to know where to cut it, but I'm going to record a new clip with me talking about, you know, having my conversation. This is why I like going off the cuff, because it really feels like an actual conversation. Even though it's just me, it's a podcast. And I want my podcast to sound conversational. Like I said, even if it's just me. So I'm going to name it Season 3, Episode 12, Part 1. But the downside of that is anything can throw me off. I can be thrown off. So to throw my dog under the bus. My dog got to throw off my own train of thought. And that's not even like a, how can I say it? That's more so of that's something that happens to me often, just in my everyday life. So I'm saving this clip. And just for the sake of this video, I am going to not label it as I usually do. And then I also have these nails on. I generally don't wear nails because my natural nails are usually kind of long. Well, they just are long. And now I'm just like, I'm moving kind of slow because I'm having a hard time typing with these. So next time for episode 13 and going forth, there's not going to be a lot of this talking. It's just, like I said, it's just going to be like a behind the scenes, a breakdown showing you guys how I record the podcast. But from this point forward, it's going to be heavily edited. Record the podcast, intro, recording of the podcast, outro, so on and so forth. No mistakes shown, none of that. Alright, so now we're going to save another clip. Or open another clip. So again, I'm going to start from the point where I want to talk about the article itself. Okay, so I chose this article to give you all a little bit of background. I don't want to tell too much about it, but I am particularly interested in writing some type of work, maybe an essay, a book. I don't know, doing some type of research on the perception and reception of black cinema of the early 20th century, studio era. And I want to research how the causes of those of the reception and acceptance changing, or the reception changing over time, as well as everybody's perceptions. I keep saying reception. Everybody's view of certain movies. Lower class, middle class, upper class, black people, critics, people who just critique black film, whether they be black or white. How did their lives shape their views of certain films, and whose view kind of rose to the top over time? So I have a particular thesis and hypothesis about that, and that's what I want to write about. And that's kind of what caught my eye about this article. So it's almost a callback to the episode from season 1 on the Green Pastures, season 2, where I talked about how when the play, The Green Pastures, as well as the movie, when these works first came out, they were generally well received by most African American audiences, black critics, or again, people who critiqued black film at that time. And over time, that reception changed. It became negative as time went on. Of course, as the Civil Rights era kind of came into play, and the movie was still kind of shown in churches from what I've read, but generally speaking, it was still viewed as a negative portrayal of African Americans, or a not so positive one. So it's interesting to read this article because, one, I love Cabin in the Sky. I can understand Barry Olnavo's point of view. Again, the magazine that he wrote for and that this article came from was Metronome. And it was a magazine for musicians. And I've actually heard of this magazine before, now that I think about it. And I think they might actually have a website now. I'm not completely sure about that. But anyway, so you have this writer who from the jump is just like, I hate this movie and I'm sick of these kinds of movies. So this is probably, let me see, a few years after The Green Pastures came out. So I think this might be representative of a time in which the people who were against what Hollywood was putting out for African Americans, this is when their perception was changing. And like I said, I love this movie, and I do think people look back on it fondly now, but I absolutely understand Barry Olnavo's point of view. I completely understand it, and it's a very valid point of view. And it offers the question of, okay, it makes you, like, reading this particular article now makes me wonder, okay, who else thought this? Who was very much for the film? Who enjoyed the film? Did black audiences generally enjoy this movie, or is that something that we've been told that, oh, it was well received when it came out? You know, what's the truth behind the reception of Cabin in the Sky, Stormy Weather, Green Pastures, going all the way back to the 1920s, Hallelujah, Hearts and Dixie? Because also keep in mind, Amos and Andy, which came out about a decade later, the TV show, not the radio show, but the TV show, it went off the air, or one of the reasons it went off the air was because there was a lot of pushback against it. The NAACP kind of talked about it, and Beulah as well. Or it's been said that people didn't like the racist stereotypes of African American men that were shown in Amos and Andy. And fast forward to like the 70s and the 80s, you start seeing people are being interviewed, comedians are being interviewed, black comedians, black general public. There was a documentary on the movie, and there's a young man. The documentary is in like the early 80s. The young man looks to be in about his 20s, probably early 30s. So he was born after Amos and Andy came out, and someone asked him what he thought about the show. He's young, and he's just like, oh, we watched it when I was a kid. No, yes. He said he watched reruns, I believe, and he was like, yeah, it's funny to me. I like it. And then you hear some stories of African Americans who were alive for the show saying, yeah, I liked it when it came out. You had black people who liked the radio show, even though it was white people doing the voices, or white guys were doing the voices of Amos and Andy. But you had people who watched the show who said, I liked it. I really enjoyed it. It was nice to see us on the screen. It might have been stereotypical, but it was nice to see us on the screen. Or on the flip side, I didn't think it was stereotypical. You know, you had some people who said that. And this is an opinion that you hear often. It even echoes today, where there are certain movies, I won't say what kind, but you have movies that usually make millions of dollars by a particular filmmaker. He started in plays, and there's one very prominent character in his movies, and black filmmakers. So now what we have with this particular filmmaker, there's been criticism of his movies being stereotypical or negative portrayals of African Americans. And on the flip side, you have people who say, no, I know these stories. These stories resonate with me. I know a character like this particular person. I have an aunt, a grandma who's like this, so on and so forth. So, I just wanted to bring light to this, this article and this particular opinion, this particular critique on Cabin in the Sky, just to hopefully open up some more dialogue about how we, critique film, discuss film, and I'm very interested again in exploring this even further. So please check out this article. Again, it is in the March 13th, 1943 issue of the Afro-American. I will have the link on Anchor, on the Kindaris Pictures website, and on YouTube as well. And let's talk about it. First of all, do you like Cabin in the Sky? Do you enjoy it? Me personally, I will say this: Stormy Weather and Cabin in the Sky came out in the same year. If we want to compare the movies, I personally prefer Stormy Weather. Cabin in the Sky, to me, is as I get older, I start to view, like, even movies that I don't think were quote unquote positive portrayals of African Americans, I still view them as trailblazing for the groundwork that they laid. I still reverence and honor and respect them for, well, yeah, I'll say that. I still respect the ground that was the path that was blazed, or the trail that was blazed with movies like this, with the actors who broke ground and kind of made the way easier for current actors, current filmmakers, current movies in general. So yeah, let's talk on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Let me know, YouTube. Let me know what you think. Do you like Cabin in the Sky? What do you think about it? What do you think about this critique? And he didn't just criticize Cabin in the Sky. He criticized Imitation of Life. And what was the third movie? Imitation of Life, Cabin in the Sky, and Green Pastures. He talked about one statement that really stood out to me. It kind of struck me. He was just like, they are still fighting the Civil War in Hollywood on the side of the South. And another question I do want to pose: do you all think this is an opinion, or this is something that still prevails in Hollywood today? I already know the answer, but again, I do want to talk about it. So thank you all so much for tuning in to this latest episode of the Kindaris Pictures podcast. Again, you can find it on Anchor, or find Kindaris Pictures on Anchor FM, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. You can find the podcast on those places. But Kindaris Pictures in general, you can find us at kindarispictures.com, kindarispictures.com. No, kindarispictures.wixsite.com/Kindaris Pictures, and then you can find us on Kindaris. Why can't I talk today? You can find us on Facebook at Kindaris Pictures, Twitter at Kindaris1117, and on Instagram at Kindaris Pictures. Also, please check out Patreon, patreon.com/Kindaris Pictures. You will find exclusive content on the Patreon, and you do have to subscribe to check out that content. So I will see you all, or hopefully you tune in next time. Again, thank you so much for tuning in to the Kindaris Pictures podcast. I am your host, A.G. Marie, and thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so that was a very interesting recording, and hands down the reason is because I have a video recording. So I'm going to go ahead and save this audio. So this is going to be a somewhat long episode, or longer than usual episode. I'm going to edit, and I am going to schedule it to be posted Monday. Monday on the 15th. So you guys will see and hear the difference of, see how it sounds as a podcast, and then you get this exclusive video or this exclusive on YouTube video. So again, after this point, I'm not doing all this explaining. We're just going to go ahead and record the show or record this video. And thank you for watching.